What up, roomies? Tonight on Neighbors. Tonight's guest is one of the coolest career paths we've ever had on Neighbors. She started her career as a NASA rocket scientist, working on propulsion systems and real space technology. But today, she's helping people here on Earth tackle with something just as challenging: imposter syndrome. She's now a keynote speaker and an expert on confidence and high performance, helping people overcome the feeling that they're not capable as others think they are. Joining us tonight is former NASA engineer and speaker Maureen Zappa, uh, Zappala.
Zappala. That's right, Zappala. I know
Zappala.
it's a mouthful. Yeah.
It really is.
My maiden name
so
was Burns. It was so easy.
it truly was. I was like, hold on, am I saying this right? And I didn't want to
Oh,
butcher
no, yeah,
it.
don't worry. It's. I get all kinds of translations, so you're fine. You're good. You're very close.
Oh,
You're right
you,
on it.
So first and foremost, how does a former, a New York girl get into NASA? Like that's like one of the biggest achievements that most kids have, and like you made that happen. So like, how did you like get in that door? Like, what was that process like?
It's interesting because it wasn't a childhood dream to work at NASA. I grew up in New York City, in Staten Island, actually. I live in Las Vegas now, and I've been many places since then. Grew up in New York, surrounded by bridges and tunnels and tall buildings.
Yep.
And so I decided I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to build them. So from a young age, I knew engineer and went to college, got the degree in mechanical engineering. In college, I had some summer internships at an Air Force base. And that's where I learned about aeronautics, air propulsion, and specifically jet propulsion and rocket propulsion. And I fell in love. So kind of shifted from structures and buildings and civil engineering to mechanical and aerospace engineering. So I started at NASA back in the early 80s. I'm older than I look. And a lot of it was because at the time, NASA needed more women. They wanted to really increase their proportion of women. Yeah. So I happened to hit the bubble at the right time. And of course, I mean, I had good grades. I went to University of Notre Dame. Woo, yay, go Irish. Got a degree in mechanical engineering. Caught the attention of the recruiters at NASA, got hired on. And that's how I started as an engineer at NASA. I didn't know anything about NASA other than they landed on the moon, shoot up rockets, and were headquartered. I didn't even know where they were headquartered. Honestly, I didn't know they had a headquarters in Washington, D.C. All I knew about were the space areas down in Florida and Texas. And
that's kind of like my knowledge as well, as like Cape Canaveral and like in Houston, I believe, right? Is that Houston? We have a problem thing, like a real thing? Are they like really located in Houston?
Oh yeah, there's third at the time back in the 80s when I worked for NASA, and I think it's the same right now. 13 NASA centers around the country, and a lot of people don't even know that. The one that I worked at was actually in Cleveland, Ohio. Who'd have thought that NASA has a presence in Cleveland? But that's where a lot of the aeronautics side of the research, specifically. Engine internal aerodynamics and some space work was done there too, but I worked on the aeronautics side of NASA.
That's so dope. So like when you first like walked into like NASA, like your first day there, like how did it feel? How like walk us through that? Like it's so dope. Like I'm so intrigued.
Yeah, it was surreal. Honestly, it was surreal. It was a privilege. When I did get hired, granted, in 1983, the job market for engineers was horrible. I was thrilled to get a job. I mean, it was really hard. A lot of my friends took many, many months to get a job. And then when I found out it was in Cleveland, really? I'd never been to Cleveland. And Cleveland had a reputation that wasn't very positive. So I thought, okay, it's got a paycheck. I'll take it. Yeah. But when I walked, like you say, when I walked into the facility, especially the propulsion systems lab where I eventually was assigned and worked day to day, I felt like I was in mission control. I mean, it was just so, I seriously, I felt like I was on hallowed ground. It was exciting. It was memorable. It was iconic. And it was NASA. I mean, it was like, go big or go home, right? But I also felt completely terrified and intimidated because it was NASA, where all the rocket scientists are. And I
Yeah,
really didn't think I fit in. I didn't think I fit in grade wise. I wasn't a straight A student. I didn't think I fit in, obviously, because I'm a woman and it was mostly men. I didn't think I fit in because I was so young. I was just fresh out of college. So there were a lot of reasons that were battling that, the voice that was in my head saying, you don't belong here. Who do you think you are? So, but
you
the
earned
geeky side of me was like, this is so awesome.
What? I would have been geeking out the second I stepped in there. Like, I could just imagine, like, and you said that you worked in the aeronautics side of everything. So you were, were you more building like rockets for like the space station, or like more like terrestrial vehicles or whatnot?
Actually, I had very little to do with anything space related because aeronautics, think of it as aeronautics as low altitude, space is high altitude. I mean, that's a very pedantic way of saying it. Think airplanes. Fighter aircraft, commercial aircraft, transport aircraft, cargo aircraft, things that fly in the lower atmosphere. I worked specifically with engines, jet engines.
Fire.
Now, it was so cool. Now the thing is, I can say I'm a rocket scientist because thermodynamically, chemically, mathematically, they use the same thermodynamic principles. They just use a little different fuel.
No, I believe it. I believe it. So when you were at NASA, right? What was one of like the projects that you're like most proud that you were working on, if you could speak on it?
Some I can't, but I think what I was most proud of was developing expertise in not just specific engines, because I worked on a handful of different engines. I worked on the F-100 engine, which is the engine that's on the F-15 and the F-16 fighter aircraft. I worked on an F-404 engine, which is on the F-18 and I believe the F-35 engine. I can't remember now. I worked on a couple of helicopter engines, the Apache, the Comanche helicopter engines. It was fun working on that, but I think my favorite achievement was when I was promoted to be the director, the facility manager of the
I see you, girl.
That was a sweet moment.
Now, I believe it. Like, I could just imagine like how you went through like the emotions of, being fresh out of college, getting picked up by NASA and then like becoming one of the top dogs, and then on top of that, you probably had senior people that were like, hey, what's up with this? But I could already see it. Like you got the juice.
Yeah. At the time, I wondered if they just promoted me because I was a woman. I knew they hired me partly because I was a woman. Even though I had the creds, I had I had the background. Before we froze.
Before you froze,
did they promote me because I was a woman? Partly yes. Partly yes, they did, but partly I really did prove myself in the job. And I had other skills that some of the other candidates didn't have. I'm really good with people, and this particular job required somebody who was good with people because I was dealing with people outside the agency, the Air Force, the Navy, the engine manufacturers. So they needed somebody who could communicate, and engineers were not usually known for that.
No, I'm pretty sure, because I would think like, and this is just me riffing off, like with, people with that level of intelligence, their communication skills, are a little lackluster, I would say. And, someone like yourself who has the communication skills could bring it all together and make everything cohesive,
Yeah, there was definitely a place for my skill set, for sure. It was a good fit. It really was. And I loved it. Now, did I believe it at the time? A little bit, no. I mean, which feeds into the topic about which, my expertise now is on overcoming imposter syndrome. Yeah. And imposter syndrome is when smart, qualified people don't really believe they're smart and qualified. And so they feel like a fake and a fraud. And that's exactly how I felt for a long time.
No, I completely get that.
So now I teach people how to overcome that because it's a thought distortion. So I teach people how to undistort it.
I get that. And like when it comes to imposter syndrome, what are like some of the factors that like contribute to it? Because I feel like I suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, when my friends tell me, yo, you've been, on your job, you've been doing great, like the podcast is going good. And I'm like, things could go better. I feel like I'm lacking in this. And, and it's a lot of like at least from my perspective, a lot of self-judgment.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know?
100%, 100%. And it is so common.
Yeah.
It affects people that are qualified and successful and, making things happen. It's not required it's not required to feel it in order to be
Yeah.
successful, but it does accompany it. So you're doing fine. You're doing great. You're normal.
Yeah.
But as far as what contributes to it, there's so many factors. It's very layered. A lot of it has to do, I shouldn't say all, a good chunk of it has to do with how we were raised. If you were raised and pushed to perform, you're going to feel like you have to be perfect. But if you were raised in a family that maybe celebrated the mere act of breathing,
Yeah.
and everything you do is wonderful, you cannot parse out what is good and not good activity or results. So you're always are going to be like, I don't know, they're not applauding. Am I doing okay? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It could also be the industry that you're in,
Yeah.
STEM industries, anything science, technology related tends to make people feel like they can't keep up. You're in a creative field. You're only as good as your last great creation.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, who are the people that you're going to be banging ideas off of? You're kind of isolated and thinking, I don't know, do I have what it takes? What is so-and-so doing? What is she doing? This compare and despair is huge. It hits people that are in management, and especially the higher levels of management, all the way up through the C-level executives, because there's more eyeballs on them and fewer sounding boards for them. So they tend to feel like, I don't know, I did okay up till now. I don't know if I can handle that next challenge. So there's just so many layers to it.
No, I get that. And do you see that, like, when people have like more responsibility, or they feel, or they tend to like be in like a high pressure situation, that'll tend to like lead to imposter syndrome?
100%.
Or
Yeah.
100%?
Yeah. Yeah. And ironically, age, the older you get, it tends to lessen a little bit. So as you get higher in responsibility, which means you're probably getting older, thankfully, age kind of counteracts a little bit of it. And so you get to the point where it's a little bit evened out and it's less stressful for you.
Yeah. Do you think it's because of the fact that as you grow, you get more comfortable with yourself and you kind of like acknowledge who you are? So would that be like,
and you start to not give a rip about what people think about you.
that's a big fact, yeah. So like when you're overcoming imposter syndrome, like let's say somebody who's like mid-30s, kind of like in the middle of their corporate, career, and they're feeling that pressure, like what are some things that they could do to like kind of like overcome that?
Yeah, one thing is to recognize what the symptoms and coping mechanisms are that we use. Evaluate something like, do you procrastinate a lot? Do you over-prepare when you have a new project? Are you resistant to delegating because you think to yourself, well, I'm smart, I should be able to figure it out by myself? It's not, you don't resist delegating because there's nobody to delegate to, or because it takes too long to train somebody. That's a different hesitation. That the lack of delegating is you feel like you have to know it, do it, understand it, and produce it all. And the reason that's so damaging is that you have set a level of competence that is so impossible that you'll never get there. You'll never be satisfied. So I know it's a long way to get to where I'm going. One of the strategies is to really evaluate.
I'm here for the journey, so take your time.
One of the strategies, besides understanding what the symptoms and coping mechanisms are, and you can research that. I mean, they're everywhere. Google it, you'll find it. Another strategy is to understand how you define your specific competence. And there's different types of competence, and they're actually created by a woman named Valerie Young, who is a cohort, a professional peer, a friend of mine. She's developed these competence definitions, which are so valuable. So, for example, the person who is the perfectionist is different from the person who has to get all the information first to make a decision. The perfectionist works hard to make it perfect. What she calls the expert is the person who has to get all the information first before they make a decision. Two different definitions of competence. Now, why does that matter? Because if you have this ridiculous standard of, I have to get all information before I make a right decision, you'll be paralyzed all the time because you're never going to get enough information.
That's true. So true. So true.
Another type of competence would be the soloist. Oh no, let me pick another one. Let's see. There's the perfectionist. There's the expert. I guess the soloist. That's probably a good one. And it goes back to the person who just doesn't want to delegate. They have to do it all themselves, and they have to do it perfectly. And then there's the what's another word for it? I think of it as the superhero. It would be the person who has to do everything. They have to do it themselves. They have to do it perfectly. They have to have all the knowledge in order to do it. So it's like all of these other competence definitions on steroids. So how do you battle this? It sounds like I'm going to say lower your standards, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't do it perfectly. What I am saying, tell yourself a different story. And the story, for example, for that perfectionist could very well be, you know what? Everything does not have to be perfect all the time. And sit with that and let it resonate and look around and see how many other people are doing things less perfectly and how you don't think poorly about them. And when you can see it in others, it's a little easier to adopt it for yourself.
No, I got that. And do you see that? And do you see that? Like, I don't know if there's a competence level for this, but a person who constantly has to have like their hands in everything, so that way they could be like assured that everything is going right.
Yeah, that's part perfectionist and part maybe superhero. You know, I can risk. I've got it. You can count on me. Give it to me. I'll squeeze it in. I'll fit you in. Don't worry. It's they're juggling a lot of plates, juggling balls and spinning plates, mixing my metaphors there.
I got you. And do you see that, like, when people like fall into that, like they're, instead of like going for whatever they're working on, it kind of like prolongs whatever they're working on because of the fact that they're trying to be a perfectionist or a superhero?
It does. And you hit on a really important point. You're right, it prolongs it. And so then what's the downside of it prolonging it? Well, that means other things don't get done. You maybe are missing a deadline. You're missing an opportunity. It's costing you money. People realize, oh, she's too busy. Don't give it to her. So you're missing opportunities. So there's a cost. There is a cost to having those definitions of competence in your life. Mm-hmm. And what we have to do, and we don't do enough of this consciously. Sometimes we do it subconsciously, but I don't think we do it enough consciously, is a cost-benefit analysis in our heads. What is that habit? Let's pick procrastination, like what you applied there, because you're just taking so long to get something done. What is procrastinating? I mean, we do things for two reasons, because it benefits us and it helps us avoid pain. Okay, so let's drill down and figure out, okay, why I'm procrastinating. What is it benefiting me? And what is it costing me? And you're only going to make a decision or make a change when the cost outweighs the benefits. But until you identify what those costs and benefits are, you're not aware that you're out of balance. You just know that you're anxious and everybody's mad at me, and okay, well, they'll get over it. I gotta get this done this way. And until you arrest that pattern and evaluate, what's it costing me, what's it benefiting me, and then choose to do different because the cost is too high, nothing will change. So then you do different. You just do something different. Break the cycle. If you're procrastinating, choose today to stop procrastinating. And what does that mean? I don't know. It could be however you decide it. I'm not going to sit on the sofa and scroll Instagram. I'm actually going to go to the gym
and do your thing.
and do my
How
thing.
about like
Exactly what I did today.
so? How about like if a person like is like a compulsive planner? Does that kind of fall into like the competent or one of the competence structures?
That kind of falls into the expert category, which is the person who has to know everything first before they make a move. They have to, somebody, for example, who wants to get more degrees, more certifications, more accolades. That's an aspect of it. But the person who has to plan out every detail, kind of anticipate
Yeah.
obstacles, outcomes, even catastrophic endings, and have some kind of a contingency plan in place. And they say, I need to research more. Let me lay out the schedule. Let me play what if games. There's wisdom in some of that, but if it starts to become a strategy for you to avoid really doing it, then it's holding you back.
Because I've noticed, like, especially with like extensive planning, like, and I'm using myself for an example. Like when I plan extensively, I usually never get it done.
Yeah.
Like I'll like if I gain a little bit of information, cool, and then if I just jump into it, things will get done. Of course, I'll take a couple of risks, but everything will work out fine. But when I do like extensive planning, I've noticed that I won't get none of that done.
Do you like the planning part? Does it feel good to do the planning?
I feel 50-50. I'll say some of it yes, but when it gets too extensive, like if I'm doing it way too much, it will like turn me off to like whatever project it is, and I'll just be like, I'll save it for another time. And
because some people get really charged up by the process of planning.
Yeah.
And it because it's delaying the process of doing. And again, that's a kind of a cost benefit. I feel like I'm getting something done by planning it. Look at my beautiful timeline and my charts and my lists, and I've got it all laid out.
Yeah.
Oh, but let me plan this a little bit more. It's can be detrimental.
Yeah. And how does like taking risks factor into all this? Like when you're like, like for like the superhero or like the expert, like I know a lot of like successful people have to take risk, or in life you just have to take risks to like gain to the upper level. Like what does that risk factor look like when it comes to imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes, I have.
And I hate that because that sounds so disempowering. I prefer to say get familiar with being uncomfortable. And I say that because every time you face a tough decision, a tough choice, you're in a place where you have to make a change, you have to push through, get out of your comfort zone, and you take however big a risk you think it is. It's stepping forward, doing something different. Every step forward to do something new is some kind of a risk. And you take the risk, and guess what? I survived. My foot landed softly and I'm on firm ground, and it's okay. And that feels good. So the next time you hit a transition point or a change or a challenge and you feel uncomfortable, the wisdom out there says, well, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. No, you get familiar. You think to yourself, oh, wait, I felt like this before. I remember I felt like that. And what did I do? I pushed forward and I was okay. Yeah. So get familiar with being uncomfortable means that you look back and see your past risks, however big or small they are, and realize it didn't kill you, right? It didn't. And if it did, you're resilient enough to bounce back. We're more resilient than we know we are. But when you say get comfortable with being uncomfortable, that sounds like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck here being miserable. And that to me sounds awful.
It does, because it's like, because of the fact that discomfort usually turns people off, right?
Yeah.
So when you hear be comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. Why do I want to, put my energy into, not being in my zone, you know what I mean? Or being in my comfort zone. But yet again, that also comes to the fact that, usually good things happen when you leave your comfort zone and you
Well, growth
explore a little bit.
certainly happens. Any
Yeah.
kind of growth only happens when you feel a little uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. In fact, I'm
Yeah.
getting ready to launch. I'm pitching my a TEDx talk, and that's the
Hey,
title: When Growth Feels Dangerous.
that's dope.
and,
I like it.
and it's
I
all
like it.
about how we process, how we in the moment that how your amygdala goes a little wonky and it freezes you or makes you want to run.
That's so true. So I had a really good connection, but I just lost. I'll bring it back up later in the conversation. But when it comes down to it, right? How do like high achievers or high performers like experience like imposter syndrome, and how crippling can that be sometimes?
It it tends to be split along gender lines, and I'll stick to the dual gender perspective because most of the research is along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Men and women do process. We both experience it, as you even said. I sometimes think I have it. Yeah, we both experience it, but we process it in different ways. Women tend to shrink back. Men tend to push forward. Women tend to. It's interesting how they differ and how they respond to success and failure. For example, if a woman leads a project and it does well, and people say, "Well done, you did great," she'll say, "Well, it's because I had a good team." In other words, she will externalize the success. A man, on the other hand, will say, "I know, I led my team really well." So he'll internalize the success.
Yeah.
Now take that same project and say that it didn't go well. A woman will say, "Oh, it was my fault. I should have had more whatever, more money, more impact, more time." A man will say, "I know, it's because we didn't have enough money, time." So a woman will internalize the failure and a man will externalize the failure.
Okay,
So
I got that.
the secret, man or woman, it doesn't matter. We need to internalize the success, own the part in the success that we are responsible for, and externalize failure. And I don't mean like blame it on somebody else. I mean identify the things that contributed to it that you had no control over.
No, I get.
Somebody made a mistake. There was a weather issue. There was, a global pandemic, whatever.
No, I get that. And on the other side of that coin, right? How does imposter syndrome like fuel success? Because I know that certain people will have these great ideas, but then they won't feel. I don't want to say fulfilled, but they don't feel that it's authentic to them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So they keep
That
pushing and
is the
striving for
core.
more.
That is the core of what the imposter syndrome experience is that it robs you of the joy of your achievements.
Yeah.
And to say, how does it drive success is putting power in the imposter syndrome and not putting it into your own character traits that led you to success. You're not doing well because you're driven by the anxiety to do well. You're doing well because in your core, you're a good worker. You're a hard worker. You're dependable. You've got these character qualities that drive you. So there's a fuzzy line between saying, well, I guess being an imposter has made me the successful person I am. No, it's camouflaged who you are. It's actually holding you back. Because if you didn't think about being an imposter, you would still be successful, probably even more so. And you would also enjoy the journey and be amazed at the person you become along the journey instead of like, oh, I'm such an imposter.
I got you on that. And back when you were working at NASA as the director, right? Did you see that any of like the people that were under you like suffer from imposter syndrome, and that were like, I don't want to say, all right, it would affect a major project that you guys were working on?
Yeah. Back then I didn't even know what imposter syndrome was. But looking back and having had conversations with some of my former coworkers, it infected all of us. In fact, I had an office mate. We had 2-person offices. We didn't have cubicles. It was really kind of nice. And my office mate was a guy named Gary, and I so admired him. I was in awe of how technically excellent he was, and how organized he was, and how he managed his area in a way that was so methodical and thorough. And I always thought, oh, I wish I could be like Gary. Well, I ran into Gary years later at a
Shout out to
retirement.
Gary.
Yeah, I ran into Gary, and I said to him, I'm like, oh my gosh, I always admire how you ran the facility. He looked at me and he goes, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And by the way, I always admired you because you made friends with everybody. You could get everybody to do anything. You were just so charming and upbeat. It was like a light bulb moment for me that I thought, wow, yeah, we all felt it, and we all undervalued the unique skills and abilities that we did bring to the job. And so I teach people, don't underestimate your own skills and abilities. Don't compare what you are compared to somebody else, because you bring a different set of beauty and value and skill and perspective and glory to that role. And it's only you can't compare and despair.
No, I get that. And do you feel that with technology the way it is and social media, that imposter syndrome is more prevalent now than it was maybe back in the 80s or 90s?
Oh yeah, because we didn't have it back then in the 80s. We didn't even know what it was back then. It wasn't even invented. But it does. It amplifies the, oh wow, I'm not as cool and successful and wealthy and influential as her. Look, she's prettier, he's wealthier, he's wittier, everybody's more than I am. And it's because of social media. And I fall into the same trap. I do. I look at my speaker friends and how they are marketing themselves. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. Maybe I should be doing that. Oh, I don't know. It's poison. We really have to just center ourselves, be aware of who we are, our gifts, talents, abilities, and influence, and our character traits of, are we optimistic and curious and flexible and dependable, and do we get along well with others? Because those will take us so far once we highlight those and not undervalue those.
And why do you think people undervalue those type of traits, like in themselves, or like so they put so much pressure on themselves?
I think it's because it's hard to measure them. It's easy, like in a sales organization, it's easy to measure who the top dog is because they got the most sales. But how do you measure the person who's the most optimistic? How do you measure the person who has the most influence, other than everybody's paying attention? That's a kind of a vague, amorphous, intangible thing. So I think that's why we undervalue them, because you can't calculate them.
And human society is obsessed with numbers. So I can see how the correlation works, that I'm not as optimistic as this person, or this person is X this, you know what I mean? And we can't really measure it because we can't put a number to it,
Yeah.
But what are like the first steps someone should take if they're realizing they're experiencing like imposter syndrome?
Breathe and realize, okay, you're not broken. It's pervasive. Everybody gets it. Not everybody. A lot of people get it. 80% of the population gets it. So you're in good company. So that's the first step. I would say, breathe. You're not broken. Number 2 is to get familiar with what it is. Do the research. I've written a couple of books on it. They're on Amazon, easy to find. And then really sit down and evaluate your competence definitions. Find out what it is that really is driving you, and re-language to yourself what competence looks like. And it goes back to what I said before, for the perfectionist. Not everything needs to be perfect all the time. For the person who is like that superhero, hey, you know what? I hate doing this. She loves doing this. I'm going to ask her to do this. It's a gift both ways. It's okay to delegate.
I feel you on that. But I could kind of like understand why people hesitate on delegation, because I'm one of those people that I feel that I need to know exactly what's happening at all times so that way I could piece everything together. But I've recently, with promotions at work and whatnot, I've recently learned how to like, you know, a, assign tasks to like other people and be able to like trust them fully, in their work and not being so hawk-eyed on it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I've also learned too, it really is a gift to somebody else when you let them use their talents to help you, serve you, assist you, offload some work from you. It took me a long time to hire an assistant. And once I did, I was like, oh my gosh, we're both happy. She's doing stuff that she loves doing, and she's doing stuff that I hate doing.
I feel you. I get that. I hear you 110% on that one. But it's like my thing is that, and this is just coming from me. It's like this nerve that you get in like the back of your mind is like, hey, is this getting done? Hey, is this getting done to like my standard? Or
Mhm.
basically where I'm getting at is like when you're at that level that you're delegating people to do things for you, and you're trying to bring this project together. How does like a person's standards or like what they feel their standard is, like how is that like detrimental to like the whole ordeal?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to it.
Yeah.
I think one of the pieces is not just is the work getting done correctly, because if it's not getting done correctly, that's either a training or a communication problem, right? That's easy enough to
Yeah.
fix. But the other side of the problem is this work getting done the way I think it should be done?
That's the key,
And
right
that could
there.
very well be a pride problem or a closed mind problem. So understanding what the rub is, where's the friction in you, I think is really good to try to figure that out.
Mm. um hmm. So like what kind of like mental shifts should a person take to like kind of overcome those things and kind of like realize to like kind of like ease up and just flow a little bit more?
In fact, I just had a call a Zoom call this morning with two other speaker friends of mine. We
Yeah.
mastermind together once a month, and the theme that went through our whole call was nobody cares. Now we joke, we're talking about marketing, and we're like analyzing a sentence in this email and the color of a website, and it really comes down to really just get it out there, because nobody cares the shade of pink. Now the bigger picture of that is, if we take a step back from the work that we are so involved and invested in, take a big step back and look at the grand scheme of where it fits into the cosmos, and realize it really isn't a big deal. I mean, I like to think I am a big deal, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not. Now, that doesn't mean that what I do is not valuable, but it does mean that my energy can be better used in other areas than worrying about the little details and staying on top of things that that I should be able to offload or even totally forget about.
True.
I joked being at NASA. I was afraid that if I made a mistake at NASA, I mean, this is NASA. This is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. It's a big deal, right? Billions of dollars in our budget. And I was afraid that if I made a mistake, that the security of the free world, the stability of the global governments would go off the rails.
No,
I
I get you.
really believed that. And I realized after a while, that's kind of an irrational belief because
True.
I'm just a little piece of the machine.
Hey, you weren't just a little piece of the machine. You had people under you. You was running you was a director. So it was like
I
you
know,
were a
but
big.
to own that much responsibility
Yeah.
was so much unnecessary pressure. Yes, I did my job well, and I made sure that I did my work well, and I let people do their work, and I trusted them, and I oversaw them, and I checked in, and we had the right checks and balances in place. But my point is that we tend to own an irrational level of responsibility to keep the planets in alignment.
Yeah.
that I only know of one being that can do that, and I'm not him.
That's a big fact. But when it comes to like perception, how much does our perception play into like the pressures that we put on ourselves, especially when you're like a high achiever or somebody that like has a lot of responsibilities.
When you say perceptions, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean
Like
our
like
process?
you like your the perception of yourself. Like you know how when all right, for instance, when you were a director, you felt the pressure the of everything, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
perception, was it the your own perception did your perception amplify that pressure,
Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah, and how does like that how does like our perception of ourselves like kind of like play into it?
Yeah,
It's like
uh, it certainly it certainly did, and it was amplified because I was the first woman in that role. I was the youngest person to ever have that role. I was surrounded by men. I was in a high tech environment. I had a lot of there was a lot of pressure, and the one of the mistakes that I made is that I suffered in isolation. I didn't ask for help. I didn't ask more questions. I didn't go to my boss more frequently, not with complaints, but more. He was more senior than I was.
yeah,
I wish I had more courage to go to him and say, "Hey, listen, I've got this issue over here. What's your perspective? How do you think I should approach this?" I wish I had done more of that because he had so much wisdom. So our perception, I think, is skewed when we isolate ourselves too much.
I
And
got
we
you.
think to ourselves, I'll look stupid if I ask. Well, really? Okay, it goes back to what I just said before. Nobody cares.
That's true.
They're too worried thinking about themselves to worry about thinking about you.
No, but that comes down to like the old expression, closed mouths don't get fed.
Yes.
Like if you don't speak up and you don't ask these questions and you're not curious about things, you're never gonna obtain the knowledge or the confidence in your work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
heard a great quote years ago. I quote it all the time. You'll be less worried about what people think of you when you realize how infrequently they do.
I like that. I like
They're
that.
not thinking about you 24/7. They're thinking about themselves.
That's true. That is true. How much does confidence play a role in like in imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's a good question too. People think that it's a lack of confidence, but it's not because you took steps of confidence to get to a position of success. So you don't lack the confidence. It's limited. It's a limit of confidence, and it's because you're now facing something that changes. There's some kind of transition. You're changing jobs, you're changing status, like you're going from being a college student down now into the workforce. Maybe you're changing companies, changing industries, maybe you're changing cultures. Maybe you're moving across the country. I moved here. I live in Las Vegas now, and I came
Yeah.
from Cleveland. And I didn't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you knew this. Did you know that not Las Vegas is not in Nevada? It's in Nevada.
Nevada.
It's in Nevada, not Nevada. And I mean, that's
Nevada.
stupid, right? No, it's not stupid because people here, locals, especially the native locals, they know that if you say Nevada, you're not from here. And
Oh,
it makes me feel like I'm out of place. So it could be something simple like some kind of a contrast. So it's change, transition, and contrast that makes imposter syndrome voices scream loud. It's not
mhm.
confidence. It's not even self-esteem. It is a thought process struggle. And thankfully, it's it's in the moment easy to do it, but you have to keep in the moment doing it because you never really get rid of imposter syndrome, but you can quiet it and
No.
make it. In my keynote, I say you can take this imposter syndrome experience and reduce it to a moment that you can just broom out of the way and get on with the business of really flourishing and enjoying your career.
No, I get that. And what I've noticed is that, a lot of people, and including myself, with imposter syndromes, we don't take the time to really enjoy like the fruits of our labor, or even and I won't even go to like the payoff, right? we don't take the time to like actually enjoy the work and just fully dive into it like full mind and spirit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's true. We're so burdened, I think, with anxiety of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing enough work? Am I going in the right direction? Am I making the right decision? That we forget that, yeah, work is work. Work is hard. It should be a struggle, but wow, do what you love and enjoy the journey.
Facts. And how often do you feel that, especially with like the people that you speak to, and like with all the people that you speak to, do you feel that they're not enjoying that journey? That they're just like nose to the grindstone, just keep going at it and not like looking up, taking a second to breathe.
Most of the audiences, interestingly, they do love their work and they do find joy in their work, but there's this definite undercurrent of anxiety where it prevents them from relaxing and just kind of exhaling a little bit. And the exhale, if they exhale, it's an exhale of, phew, that was close. They almost figured out I didn't know what I was doing. It's not the exhale of, oh, that was a really good job done.
Yeah.
So, I invite people, I encourage, I challenge people to change their thought process so that they can have more moments like that of, oh, wow, that was great.
I got you. I got you. And when it comes to anxiety, right, with that undercurrent, how do people like usually like build that up, especially when they're doing like a job that they love? Like, where does that anxiety usually come from? Is it like from the pressures of performing, or is it, satisfying their bosses or their upper management, or is it
Mhm.
just like they just don't want to, like, excuse my language, f things up?
Yeah, I think it's all of that. I think when we feel like there's eyeballs on us, whether it's coworkers that are checking us out or a boss who is trying to keep things on task or on schedule, or if it's a client who is looking at your performance and wondering, am I spending the right money with this right person? Or if it's, you give a report or you give a presentation or you have to give account for something. Anytime you feel like your work is being evaluated, it feels like a threat in your body, and that will
Yeah,
cause your brain feels like it's at war. It's like, we got to defend ourselves. Your brain is, it's kind of interesting. Your brain is built to protect you, not to promote you. So you have to battle this voice that says, ah.
so like,
And
how do you
it's
like
all of those
how,
things that you said.
so like, what steps can a person take to go from defense to promotion?
Before you are even in that position where you're being evaluated, you have to step back and really understand the thought processes that will lead you, because your body reacts to a lot of the vocal stimulations, the words, the way you take in things. So things like talking to yourself, like, I've
Yeah.
got this, I have done the work, I have researched this, I have presented this, I have worked this, I have, if you can convince yourself that you've done the work and that you stand for something of value in the work, it's going to be easier to handle that moment of evaluation and terror.
I got you. I got
It may never go away. Okay, so I've been a speaker for a long time. The scariest moment in my life is still those 10 seconds before I step out on a stage.
you. I feel you
Still,
110%. I feel you 110%, because besides doing the podcast, I also DJ. So, and I've DJed, for a crowd of 5 people. I've DJed for a crowd of 5,000 people. It's cool. But anytime, like those couple of seconds right before when I'm loading up the music, I'm getting it and I'm just looking at the crowd. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
don't press the wrong button when we do this. Let's go.
yeah. And if I open my mouth, are they going to flee for the exit? Oh, look, they're still here. I must be doing something right.
Do you feel all right? Since you were, because of your career, you were in a building filled with intellectual and very smart people. Do you feel that the more intellect you have, the harder your imposter syndrome is, because of the fact that, you know, your IQ is kind of high up there and all that.
Well, IQ and education are two different measurements. Just so you know, there's
Oh,
a
all
lot of
right.
very
So,
high IQ people,
so
but
let me
not
rephrase it. Like, you were in a room with extremely smart people, extremely capable people. Do you feel that the more capable and the more, I want to say, intelligence you have, the stronger your imposter syndrome is?
You know, that's a good question, and I don't know if I have a flat out clear answer. So let me just kind of process it as I talk out loud here. One of the going back to the definitions of competence,
Yeah.
one of the types of competence definitions is that of the expert. I have to get more information, which could be more education, more degrees, more certifications, more whatever, more. I have to get more education. So in fact, I talked with somebody this morning. She said, I spoke with a person. She has a PhD in this and a PhD in that, so it must be okay. I said, no, that just means that she was terrified of being stupid. So she went and spent more money to have more things on. I'm not discounting the value of the education, but sometimes our motivation to get the education comes from a place of woundedness.
Okay.
It's not like I want to get the education. It's like I feel like I need to get the education. So sometimes imposter syndrome drives the effort to get the education, and getting the education doesn't necessarily decrease imposter syndrome. Sometimes it increases it, and sometimes it doesn't. So it's not a cause and effect. It's more of a, the difference between causation and correlation.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're correlated, but not causing each other.
No, I got that. I got that. All right, all right. All right. Before we actually go, right, I got a couple of fun questions for you.
Okay.
What's the most
you are fun to talk to, so I'm enjoying it.
What's the most like rocket scientist moment you've ever had?
The most rocket scientist moment I ever had.
Yeah.
I'll tell you an embarrassing one.
Let's hear it.
And it's not rocket science, but it is aerospace. I don't remember the year, probably around 1989-ish. I don't remember. And I had to go out to another NASA center. I went to NASA Dryden, which is out in Southern California. It's now part of NASA Ames. And there was a B-2 bomber out on the tarmac. And they gave us a tour of the tarmac, and they said, would you like to go into the cockpit? I'm like, oh, I would love to go into the cockpit. We get out to the airplane, and there's a ladder going up into the cockpit, and I wouldn't go on the ladder because I was wearing a dress. And I missed the chance to go into the cockpit of a B-2 bomber.
Did you ever make up for it? Like because I know you said you worked on the F-15s. Did you ever like say, hey, strap me into an F-15 and take me for a ride?
No, I've never been. As a civilian, highly unlikely that we would have ever gotten a joyride in a fighter. I did get into one.
Nice.
I got into a Thunderbird back when I worked at NASA in Cleveland. NASA, the center was co-located with the Cleveland airport. And when the Thunderbirds came to town for the air show, which they did every other year, they would house their aircraft at the NASA hangar. So they would every time they were there, they would have an open house, and people got to go and meet the pilots and go climb up into the cockpit. So it's kind of fun. But I never got a joyride in one.
Oh, that's dope. All right. Let's see what else we got here.
And I do tell a story in my keynote about how I had to crawl inside of an F404 turbofan engine, which is the engine on the F-18, because they needed somebody to do some measurements, and the guy who was scheduled to do it was, I'll just say he was not the best choice to do it. So they volunteered me to do it. And so I had to crawl up inside of this engine, and it was terrifying and glorious at the same time.
Nice. So, all right, another hypothetical, right? Let's say you're back at NASA. What would be like your dream mission to work on, or your dream project to work on?
I would love to be, my dream location would be right back where I was at the propulsion systems lab, in the redone control room, because I know it's all been updated and high tech and yowza kinds of stuff. So it'd be fun doing that. Projects, golly, I don't know. Next generation fighter aircraft turbofan engines.
All right,
Because
cool.
I love jet engines. I love turbofan engines, aircraft engines.
All right, that's dope. That's dope. And besides like jet engines or jet fuel, right? Do you think we might be getting close to like a different form of propulsion, or something like that?
I've been away from the agency for so long. I've been away from technology for so long. I can't even begin to pretend to know an answer to that.
I got you. All right. Well, and my last but not least, before our final thoughts, how close do you think we are to NASA actually saying, "Hey, there's aliens up there"?
Oh boy, that's a great question. and I say it's a great question because out here in Las Vegas, not in Nevada, but in Nevada,
Nevada.
Area 15 is, Area 51, not far from here. Yeah. And that's, the place where all the woohoo, wacky wackadoodle stuff goes on. I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I can understand why some people are and how there might be some information that's not true or not forthcoming. So since we're recording this, I'm just not even going to answer other than to say, I don't know.
All right.
I don't have any secret sources that you might not already have. So,
so last but not least, do you have any final thoughts, messages, words of wisdom for the roomies?
Yeah, I'll repeat two things. Imposter syndrome is pervasive. You're not normal. You're not broken. You're normal. And don't get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get familiar with it, because when you're familiar with something, you know how to get past it because you've been there before.
I feel you. And roomies, remember, happiness usually lives on the other side of fear. And aim for the stars. Peace out.
I love it.